I did not get a chance to read this article, and I would be remiss if I didn't give it some air on the show because it is possibly one of the most bird brain things I've ever read. This comes courtesy of his name is Anand Girahadras, and I know I'm butchering his last name, but you know the guy. He has Jimmy Neutron hair, and he's one of these sort of like liberal democratic media
He does
figure.
have Jimmy Neutron. Look at that! Holy shit, dude! He has Lego piece hair.
Yeah. And like if I were to describe him, he's a guy that they book on like CNN or MSNBC to come on and be like, I'd be lying if I said Israel wasn't committing a genocide in Gaza.
Yeah,
but look.
Yeah, he's like the like farthest left guy they'll have on like MSNBC or CNN, like a very identifiable like left liberal media role that we've seen since Trump.
There are a lot of parts in this article, I skimmed it. There are a lot of parts where he's like, and by the way, I said I talked about this like a bunch of years ago, but I talked about how much I don't like Bernie and how he was doing stuff wrong, and I predicted that he would lose, actually. It's like, okay, fucking idiot. What are you talking about?
He was a big Warren guy, so what
so,
an amazing predictive algorithm.
Yes, absolutely.
So like I think like knowing that he has hair like Jimmy Neutron, he was a Warren guy. You can like I think even if you're not familiar with Anand, you're familiar with the template here, and this is something he wrote for his Substack. The headline is "The Rise of the Brat Pack and a New Political Style," and he filed this right before the DNC. But he was like, it's obvious where he's going with this, and it begins as such. He says, there's a little preface to this article. He says, "So my flight was canceled. Here I was, all ready to go to the DNC, leather jacket in tow, and the flight started vanishing due to terrible weather. I will be heading west soon, but first I wanted to jot some notes on the real meaning of what I believe we will be witnessing this week, which is the rise of a new political style taking over the leadership of the Democratic Party. The great political story of 2024 is President Biden's decision to stand aside in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris. It is a story of selflessness, of generational transition in the rise of Harris." Okay, you can't call it selflessness when Biden tried as long as possible to prevent it from happening.
Literally, the only reason he stepped aside was that they found out it would be like mathematically impossible for him to win, and that everyone would hate him. He was grabbing on for dear life until that.
It's selfless in that Biden is no longer has a self. His mind is empty. He's a husk now.
He says, "And the rise of Harris, and of a woman who has at times struggled to command the narrative coming into her own in a way that has energized the party, turned the race upside down, and roused deadened souls. But this story, as dramatic as it is, may obscure the deeper story, which is less about the transition from one leader to another and more about the ascendance of a new political style at the top of the Democratic Party. We are witnessing the rise of what I'm calling the Brat Pack, and with it, a new approach that elevates attention over restraint, storytelling over self-explanatory policy-mindedness, fight-picking over always taking the high road, and thrilling the base over diluting for moderates."
They're just describing Regina George. Literally, they're like, teenage girl time. I'm so mad at Charlie for doing this. This is all her fault, dude.
No, I mean, so when we were at the DNC, that Brat shit was, just being in the city of Chicago, you could like, it was just sort of suffused. They're so hype on this Brat thing right now. And of course, Anand is the perfect nitwit to fucking to give a loudspeaker to
be like, I'm
absolute drivel.
Actually, unlike everyone else looking at this Brat stuff, I'm a smart guy.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm the one who should really pick this apart. I'm pissed off that
I'm reading the auguries
the
provided by Charlie XCX's Cocaine album and why it's good for the Democratic Party.
Is this also like, this is like this year's death of neoliberalism? It died in 2021, died in 2022, died in 2023, and this time it's dying. The other times it was dying because it got killed by Build Back Better. This time it's replaced by Brat.
It's the New Deal.
Do you remember when everyone was like, yo, Fukuyama was so wrong, dude? Now it's just like, oh no, he was so right. Hang on. Like,
yeah, like the end of history didn't mean that history would just stop occurring. That like events in here, what he meant is that like liberal capitalist democracy is just like there's no alternatives because we've made it that way. And to this point, I mean, yeah, he's still batting 1,000.
Yeah.
But it says here, with apologies to the earlier incarnation, I'll call them the Brat Pack after the campaign's embrace of a pop star's embrace of Harris. I believe their rise is the most underrated story of this race and the real subtext of what we're about to see at the convention this week. This article is the political equivalent of everyone who wrote a review of the Barbie movie about how it was a really important piece of art that needs to be
That
taken
was
seriously.
what you just read is one of the worst paragraphs I've ever heard in my entire life.
Well,
really
Hesse,
bad.
buckle up.
Oh my god! I mean, even just writing wise, it was crazy. That was insane.
And so in what follows, I wanted to break down some of the defining features of the new Brat Pack approach, the new style and orientation that is taking over the Democratic Party. You'll notice that in his preface, he said that one of the features of the Brat Pack is not really being mindful about policy. There's a departure from self-explanatory policy mindedness. So this new orientation that's taking over the Democratic Party, is it Medicare for all? Is it not doing a Holocaust to Palestinians? No, but it's Charlie. It's mother, it's cunt, it's serve, it's period, as you said.
It's storytelling. It's storytelling, which is a journalist way to say lying.
Yeah,
it's an op-ed journalist way to say lying.
Well, the first big item in the Brat Pack approach is, of course, storytelling. And he writes here, the Brat Pack approach emphasizes storytelling over the idea that good policies and good results should be self-explanatory. Well, I mean, like, what he's saying is the Democrats don't have good policies or good results, but man, oh man, can they tell a story?
Yeah, me in the principal's office after getting sent there for saying the Titanic, like, your son is a really good storyteller.
We are seeing a shift from a view of the work should speak for itself to nothing speaks for itself. You've got to tell the story.
What story are they telling, Anand? That they like
it's
what,
Felix?
What
it's Brat Girl Summer. It's Brat.
Have
Girl
you
Summer.
ever heard, Felix? Have you ever heard of Joseph Campbell? Have you ever heard of the hero's journey? Okay. Have you ever heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh? Okay. Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. It's just stories. These are the stories we tell ourselves. You know.
Did they write articles like that? Did they write articles like Winston Churchill is the Irving Berlin Prime Minister?
Yeah. Okay. You've got Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Gilgamesh and Indiku. It's the story of twos. Now we got Harrison Walls. Easy, done. That's a story. Say no more. So he goes, I've often detected in my conversations with high-level Democrats a contempt for story. It's a contempt.
Oh my god! I hate story.
I
don't like story.
I like sort of character and vibes based things. I don't think let's not get too lost in plot.
I only read nonfiction. Okay, and I don't like. I like the facts. Okay, I like looking at a chart. Call me when you have a chart.
Also, I'm so, like, as fucking moronic. This is moronic, but also it's like wrong. It's like, no, Democrats love story. They love the story of Obama. They even tried to like make a story around Hillary. Like, oh, she was the girl who was good at everything, but the time wasn't right. But then blah, blah, blah. They love a story. Just all their stories suck dick.
Yeah, Biden's story was like, my family was killed by a car in burn pits. Please vote for me. I've been in office for the last 100 years.
Biden's story is, my dad was the first guy to say love is love in 1949.
Biden's story is like, my life is the book of Job, but I didn't learn anything, and God will not spare me. And I'm in the hands of Satan. There's no redemption. There's no salvation for me.
My story is, honey, I killed the kids.
It was, in retrospect, it actually is crazy, like, thinking about watching Pete Buttigieg try to do a story, because he obviously, like, CIA, McKinsey, like, little fucking freak. Like, there's just a huge blank spot. It's like applying to a job and there's like a huge, like, 12-year gap on your resume. And he's just like, I'm just a gay guy who I was in Afghanistan for a minute. Isn't that crazy? And then, you know what? I'm here.
His story was, I am gay, but if I could get brain surgery to change that, I would do it in a second.
It was crazy when he said that in that documentary. I felt so bad. His husband was right. Jason was right there. Jason needs to try meth once and kill him. I swear to God. He'd be so much happier in jail.
Back to Anand. It goes here. In 2009, I wrote about Bernie Sanders' near refusal to tell his own personal family story, even though it would have
near refusal,
even though it would have helped him tremendously. As many
isn't it near refusal not a refusal?
Yeah,
I mean, like it would not have helped him. And if he did tell his story, Anand would write he would write an article about how it's offensive or something. Like, I mean,
he did. He was like, my family was killed in the Holocaust. And then all these people were like, he's Jewish. He's not Jewish.
Yeah.
He's an atheist.
Here's why it's anti-Semitic that he said that.
He says,
he
writes, the Biden administration was huge on tangible accomplishments and improvements in inflation numbers, and relatively less interested in touting these things in ways that broke through. Like all they did was tout this shit. It just doesn't break through because people feel that groceries are still too fucking expensive. He goes, which you can blame on the media, but when you're blaming the media, you're losing. My Beth-faced understanding of this is that it comes from a sense that voters should be treated with respect as reasoning creatures who will appreciate actual achievements and will reward you for what the documented progress actually is. The Brat Pack is moving away from this nose to the grindstone approach. Sometimes you've got to rise from the grindstone and sing for all to hear. That is such a funny.
It's crazy.
Okay, sometimes you have to. The Brat Pack is moving away from this nose to the grindstone approach. Sometimes you've got to rise from the grindstone and sing for all to hear. Yeah, and then the overseer will whip you for singing when you should be having your nose to the grindstone. What is this singing? What are you singing?
That's my favorite part in the musical adaptation of Chaucer's. What's the thing Chaucer wrote?
Canterbury Tales?
Yeah. When the miller is rises from the grindstone and just starts singing. It's one of the most electrifying parts in the entire story.
Also he says here, just a little earlier, he said, my best faith understanding of this is that it comes from a sense that voters should be treated with respect. Here's why that's wrong. Voters are stupid, which is like, I kind of appreciate because, this has long been, the editorial view of this one podcaster is that you obviously shouldn't treat anyone with respect, let alone voters. Oh, no, thank you.
He's trying to arrive at Adam Curtis's conclusions, but he's doing it wrong and like getting to the wrong place. So he's like, here's what I think. The reason that everyone is easily manipulated by advertisements and the masses are like easily manipulated is just because like we haven't found the right story yet. We need the Brat Pack approach to really.
And then something strange happened that none of them could have predicted.
But in reality, nothing ever really changed.
Moving on from storytelling, attention. Attention is very important, and I like how he's just describing I think he's leaning too hard into the brat metaphor because he is just describing a really annoying child who wants to tell you about the TV shows they're watching that you have no idea what they're talking about, and then they demand your attention to do so. So he writes here, attention. The Brat Pack stresses attention. Its approach reflects an overriding interest in commanding it. Too many of us in the media and politics and in book publishing and many of the other worlds I know best are still living in the past.
How is he so bad at writing?
This is the worst writing. Listen to this tortured sentence. Anand, put your nose back to the grindstone. Stop singing and learn how to write. Too many of us in the media and in politics and in book publishing and many other of the worlds I know best are still living in the past.
Oh my God. That sentence was like, what he did to that sentence is what like a chiropractor does to your body. That was horrific.
You're in the hospital now. You can't move your legs or arms anymore.
Many of the worlds he knows include politics, book publishing, and the media. But he goes, stuck in a world in which Walter Cronkite told millions of people what they needed to know and how to think. We have not adjusted to a new media world whose fundamental quality is fragmentation and whose most precious resource, therefore, is human attention.
This is like if Hideo Kojima got into a different car accident every day for a month and then tried to write Metal Gear Solid 2 again.
Yeah.
He goes. He compares it to FDR's fireside chats, but he says there was a sneering at the attention seizers. When someone like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rose on the strength of her attentional intelligence, intelligence.
Shut the fuck up.
She did not
Shut
rise.
the fuck up.
She did not rise.
Oh my God.
She did not win election because of her attentional intelligence. And I mean, actually, so some might say she won that election because of the policy positions she stuck out.
Because of a lack of attention. Partly, it was a very low turnout election.
Yeah.
I guess that's attentional intelligence too. Anyone who has ever gotten any type of result from turnout, that's attentional intelligence. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I mean the attentional intelligence was lacking from Pelosi and what's his name, Joe, the guy she unseated, who they didn't try at all in that election, and they got it snatched from them. But listen to this drivel. It says, some dismissed her and others struggled to emulate her, showing the distance between the mainstream and her. Under Harris, the Brat Pack is showing a complete break from the old approach. The new style centers their pursuit of attention, embraces memes, is willing to try weird things, and above all understands that you win when people cannot look away. We are finally not having Trump's conversation.
I have already read this book. It's called Meme Magic, and Baked Alaska wrote it in 2016. It's the exact same fucking thesis as Baked Alaska. It's the same thing, but just with, like, he's actually a worse writer than Baked Alaska.
And no, the way that he's writing this, it's so clear that it's like his goal kind of is to be able to either be like, I was right. I was so right about this. It's so good. That's why the Democrats won. Or be like, I predicted this. I predicted this horrible strategy that they use. Like, it's so he has so much contempt for this strategy that he's describing.
And by the way,
it infuses every single line of being like, yeah, no, I can't believe the Democrats are trying to get people's attention now. Like, and also, like, you can't.
This is a total break from the old approach of just, please ignore me. I'm trying to be as inconspicuous as possible running for president.
Yeah, and this idea that you can't do both. You can't tell a story or be like demand attention or play to people's emotions and also have policies or change anything or do anything. It's a choice. It's a binary choice, and you have to pick one. And he's like, yeah, what they're actually doing is they're taking this road. They're taking the Brat road. So they're not doing any policies. It's actually quite an astute strategy. We'll see how it works out for them.
In the preface to this, he said, like, well, I missed my flight to Chicago, leather jacket in tow. And I just, like, all I can think about is him wearing a leather jacket while writing the phrase attentional intelligence.
How hot was it in Chicago, Will and Felix, when you were there?
I mean, like, too hot for a leather jacket. It wasn't stifling, though. But, beauty knows no pain.
If you really wanted to wear a leather jacket and look like the Warren supporting version of Roger from Doug, like, you could force it.
I'm gonna go quickly on these last couple ones because it's just
we're
drivel.
We're just stopping you. We're
next up is
you.
Emotion. One of the most interesting debates I've had in recent years with people who think deeply about fighting authoritarianism. Again, that sentence is so bad.
He's so bad at writing. Hey, he probably makes $1 million a year doing this shit.
Okay. One of the most interesting debates I've had in recent years with people who think deeply about fighting authoritarianism.
No one edited
Authoritarianism, my least favorite ideology. We got to get rid of it. Get rid of authoritarianism.
Is about whether pro-democracy movements can and should seek to compete with autocrats' skill at catering to the emotions. My former New York Times colleagues Roger Cohen and I had a spirited back and forth, blah, 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 blah. It goes, I believe it is totally possible to make people feel big feels for the democratic cause. And I don't think that's dangerous, but the Vibes faction wasn't in charge all these years. The new style recognizes emotional labor, if you will, as vital to political work. That is why Harris and Governor Tim Walz are constantly talking about joy. That is why the campaign has embraced the notion of the centrality of vibes, not just policy. The Brat Pack doesn't have any disdain for emotion.
It's literally, Felix, do you remember that video game We Happy Few, where everyone's on a drug called joy?
Yeah,
It reminds me of that. Also, like, what is Roger Cohen arguing with him there? What was he arguing? He was like, no, Democrats shouldn't play to people's emotions. It's so dangerous to get people to like your side. You can't get them to like democracy because then they might become rabid maniacs.
Roger Cohen was like the honky in like a rock video from 1985 where like Rat or Motley Crue crashes.
Turn down that emotion.
Yeah,
he's the guy that Money for Nothing was about.
Rat or Motley Crue like crashes fancy dinner. He's that type of like Dee Snider kicks him down a flight of stairs because he's like these memes are too funny. We can't have them. This emotional labor is healing our trauma too much. Yeah.
This little faggot on the MTV.
Okay, next is culture. The Brat Pack. The Brat Pack wants to play in the culture. The Brat Pack wants to play in the culture. Mom, can I play in the culture? No, it's too late. It's weird. Dinner's in 5 minutes.
I'm picturing the door from Silent Hill 3 that's locking the apartment. It's like the culture. You're not allowed to play in the culture past 11.
I think this is the first essay we've ever read where it can like cause someone who's learned English to unlearn it.
Yes, no.
Like it can scrape language away from your brain.
Republicans showing this to people taking their citizenship tests as like setting up fake abortion clinics, but for learning for the citizenship test.
Yeah.
Listen to this. A constant lament of organizers and activists and electoral campaigners on the broad left in recent years has been the lack of savvy engagement in the culture. Has it? Has it really? Has that been a constant lament of organizers and activists and electoral campaigners? Did someone tell Ananda about commas? You don't need to put an and after every single thing you're like bringing up.
The broad left, that's Kamala, that's Hillary, that's AOC. Those are the broads on the left. You know what I mean?
This next sentence,
what was Pokemon Go to the polls? Is that not engaging in culture?
I mean, okay, this next sentence is possibly the best sentence I've read on the show this year. So he says, the constant lament about the lack of savvy engagement in the culture. The right has its MAGA hats. Where were the left's hats?
Where were the left's hats?
The answer is at chapotraphouse.store.
Yeah, I need one of those Zapata oil hats, by the way.
And listen to this.
No, did he forget the pussy hats? He totally forgot about that, apparently.
Listen to this. The right has racist songs about small towns. What anthems has risen to the fore and held the nation in thrall to represent values of pluralism, multiracial democracy, and freedom? Isn't the whole point of this fucking piece that the Democrats are copying Charlie XCX's album? And this idea that the right has their racist songs about small towns. What anthems have risen to the fore and held the nation in thrall to represent the values of pluralism, multiracial democracy, and freedom? He wants a north of Richmond, but about Elizabeth Warren. And the reason that guy has been disappeared and will never be heard from again is A, that his song sucked, and B, it was a transparent attempt to astroturf some kind of savvy cultural engagement on the right. The reason liberals and Democrats don't have to worry about savvy engagement with the culture is that our culture is hegemonically liberal. And thus we don't need fucking anthems about multiracial democracy and the virtues of democratic civic life.
Yeah, and when we get them, when people try to make them, they fucking suck. Like the Rina Sawayama song with Elton John, which is like the worst song I've ever heard in my fucking life.
This is like a mirror image of like the Trump people who, like, when Trump won, they weren't happy because they didn't achieve cultural dominance. Only it's on the other side where he, despite liberal cultural hegemony, he wants this to be seen as like an underdog force in American culture when it's really not. And
yeah.
By the way, there is a liberal, pluralistic Richmond, north of Richmond, like an anthem that really portrays America's best values, its best liberal values. And it's the King Von song where he's robbing the guy's house and he thinks he sees a really sexy girl, but it's his sister. And that's the liberal Richmond, north of Richmond.
I'm picturing that's like a 9-minute anthem, like the Immortal Technique song. He rapes his mom.
It's very different. He doesn't do the thing from Dance with the Devil. He's just like, who's this sexy bitch? Hey, that's my sister. and he's like, what are you doing here, pal? It's like a musical. It's really fun.
You can almost see where in the listen through that he did to the album Brat, he came up with these ideas. Like, this is definitely, he got to Von Dutch and he's like, yeah, there's no songs anymore. Like, the funniest thing is the idea of that this guy had to listen to that album and be like, and try to come up with like an astute political piece about it. And that's why he came up with all this dumb shit and tried writing it down. And that's why it's so incoherent.
You know, he was sitting in the United Business Lounge and like no one was talking to him and he was staring off in the distance. And he turned to the person next to him and was like, they're going to call this the Brat election.
Yeah, no, it literally.
Then he was like, oh God, I have to write an art. Now I'm like pot committed to writing this shitty article.
This is like the journalist version of Max Landis's big, like 300-page thing about Carly Rae Jepsen. Like, call me maybe.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna skip to the end here because, like, I've already given myself brain damage reading this drivel. But it says here, beyond the specific elements, and like a final word about what they add up to. The Brat Pack is pushing the Democratic Party in a more dice-rolling direction. Take the risk, try the weird thing, shock people a little, channel your inner Bonnie Raitt, and let's give them something to talk about. What the fuck have they done, other than Joe Biden nearly dying during the debate? What was anything the Democratic Party did that's been shocking or weird? Or anything like apart from, like, I guess, I don't know, choosing Tim Walz over Josh Shapiro, I guess that surprised me. So, I mean,
in some sense of the word, it's shocking that Kamala Harris has committed to eternally arming Israel no matter what. Just in the morally shocking sense, but not actually surprising for a Democrat. But I get like Tim Walz has told the couch joke a bunch of times. So
It was crazy when they brought up the empty chair from Clint Eastwood's like speech at the RNC, and they just shot a blank right at the head area of where Obama would be sitting in the chair. That was really crazy.
Has enough time passed now that we can all agree that the Clint Eastwood empty chair speech was pure fire, and he was speaking only facts?
He could do no wrong.
He was speaking only facts at the RNC.
O'Bungle, like I don't know if you guys saw this rare O'Bungle that I found over the week. It's a picture of Obama. He's on Air Force One, and one of his advisors is sitting on the chair, and Obama just like sits on her lap. It's like
he sees all chairs as empty. He just sits on them.
Yeah,
he had a soda past the 8 p.m. That's what he sat on her lap.
Yeah, O'Bungler saw every chair as his, and Clint was the only guy brave enough to call him out, and he's never done it since. Have you noticed that?
No, it's true.
He hasn't fucked with anyone's chair since Clint did that. So you're welcome.
And now let's give us a
I'm so sorry, but I have to point out something that you passed in this.
Please.
One of the paragraphs here, they have titles like culture, attention. One of them is called Mobiusuation. Okay. Perhaps the most politically significant element of the Brat Pack's way is the rise of what one of its leading gurus, Anat Shenker-Osorio, calls Mobiusuation. The theory that Democrats should not seek to persuade by diluting their offerings to reach out to the middle, the moderates, the centrists, whatever. Rather, that they should seek to animate the base to persuade the middle. That's a really, I was really waiting for him to bring up Anat Shenker-Osorio, who's one of my gurus, one of the gurus of the Brat Pack. Honestly, mentioned in the same breath as Charlie XCX always, Yeah.
And then that completely nonsense made up word. So Big Finish on, he says, it is the rise, perhaps, of a more fearless Democratic Party. Fearless about how it communicates and crafts statements. Fearless about not pandering to the white moderate. Not pandering to the white moderate. Okay, all right.
To their white surprise.
Fearless in picking a vice presidential nominee based on chemistry rather than electoral calculus. Fearless about hitting back and even being deservedly vicious. Fearless about making jokes about Walz's inability to eat spices and trusting that people will appreciate the playful ribbing rather than believe with Ben Shapiro that whiteness is under attack. Fearless in shaking things up on the assumption that the old ways can't beat fascism. Yes, we have a new candidate in Harris, but don't sleep on the deeper shift. A new political style is on the rise. The Brat Pack has a plan to defeat Trump. Will it work?
Question mark? Wow.
Yes, question mark. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That's so
Well,
beautiful.
if it doesn't work, we'll know who to blame it on.
Yeah, he doesn't even like take a like he writes this whole shitty essay, but he doesn't even have like the courage to say it's good or bad.
No, of course,
It's
because
just
he wants to be able to look back and be like, I was right about all this, by the way.
Exactly.
I saw that they didn't have any policies. That's all he's saying is that I saw that they didn't have any policies. And he just spent a million words saying that, like a million of the stupidest. He writes like he's being paid per word, like a pulp novelist from the 40s.
Like L. Ron Hubbard, yeah.